Welcome to memoQ Talks, where we talk to industry leaders about their experiences, lessons learned, and what works best across all areas of localization. Now here's your host.
Hi, Juliana. How are you?
Hi. How are you doing, Mark? Good to see you.
Pretty good. I am, as you probably know, all the way over on the left coast, the West Coast. Are you in New York right now?
Actually, I'm just outside New York, but yes, I'm in upstate New York at the moment.
Okay. How is upstate New York in the summertime?
It's beautiful right now. It's a gorgeous day. I'm looking forward to going for a run a little later. So we're out in the middle of the country here. So it is
That's
really
funny.
nice.
I'm looking forward to going for a run a little bit later as well. But I've got a few more hours in my day because I'm just getting started here. I years ago, I think I was on my way to Gala and I had the crazy idea of driving from Seattle to Boston, and I stopped off in Ithaca. It was incredibly beautiful. I wasn't super impressed with some of the other, like the bigger cities up in that region, but like that Ithaca area, and it's just super nice. Are you anywhere around there?
Oh yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah. So we're a little northeast of that. Just a little southeast of Syracuse, just like right in the middle of the state. So in Hamilton.
What is up with all of the kind of Roman, I guess there's Roman names, Ithaca, Syracuse, or Ithaca's Greece, right? That would be Greek, right? And Syracuse,
yeah, I think so. That's right.
Is Syracuse originally Greek or Roman? And then there's some other ones with upstate New York. I know that there's like 3 or 4 cities up there named. No idea.
Yeah, I don't know. They have a whole thing here, a whole mythology up here. But yes, no, Ithaca's not too far away. I think it's about an hour and a half west from here. So it's that whole area. It's like central New York. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
really nice.
First off, thank you for coming on memoQ Talks. You have a tremendous amount of experience helping companies inside the local industry and outside the local industry with their marketing efforts, developing their marketing strategy and so on. I want to talk to you about marketing strategy in general, some of the changes over the last few years, how marketing and sales can work together. And then I want to talk to you about specifics in the local industry, because the local industry is going through some big changes these days. But before we do that, maybe could you just take a few minutes, give us your elevator kind of introduction to your background in marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a fairly unconventional background in marketing. I actually studied art history in college, but also got a degree in international relations. I worked at a museum for 7 years. I loved it. It was great. So I was very much all about art and got into digital marketing that way. So with that, I started expanding out into other industries, and I worked in publishing. I worked in fashion. Eventually, I decided to make the jump to the dark side of B2B SaaS, if you will. So that's actually when I entered the localization industry, was through Smartling. So I was their head of marketing there. And I was at Smartling from 2015 to 2018. Afterwards, most of my experience had been e-commerce up until Smartling. So after Smartling, I went and worked at a SaaS company called Flow Commerce that was bought by Global-e after 3 years. So that was a really exciting exit, a $500 million exit in the 3.5 years I was there, which was really, really fun. And then, after dabbling in a couple of other industries here and there, I decided I wanted to do more consulting. And so I've been doing consulting for different tech startups, B2B services businesses, loc industry, non-loc industry, international businesses. So it's been, a real array of different work.
Awesome. Well, I think you said you started with Smartling around 2015.
Yes, Smartling in 2015. That's right.
Okay, that's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What has changed over the last 10 years in terms of the marketing landscape?
Marketing in general, not just in loc. Right?
Yeah.
So, there's been a lot. So when I arrived at Smartling, it was all about inbound, right? It was the whole HubSpot was the hot thing. And just all of those inbound tactics and everything, and just starting to do lead generation or demand generation was kind of the hot term at that time. I remember that was kind of the new term. And that was a really big thing. And it was very much the kind of marketing generates leads, then hands them to sales, and then this happens. And that it was just a very linear process. And what I would say the biggest change that I've seen is, now we're talking a lot about sales-led growth versus product-led growth versus customer-led growth and all of that. And maybe there's been some switches in there. But to me, what I've really been seeing more is that marketing is less that top of funnel, the sole lead generator. And it's really just in support of sales. So, and not to relegate marketing in any way, it's just to say that marketing and sales, I talk about them a lot to different teams I work with, that marketing and sales are one family with two parents. And they really are just one together. Yeah. And people, actually some people, when they get it, they're like, oh, that makes sense. And other people who don't are just confused. And it's like, I get it. It sounds a little strange. But what that means is marketing is really layered across the entire funnel, and sales should be as well. And at different points in the funnel, they each have their responsibilities that they have to lean into. So sales might be more present and, driving certain initiatives toward the bottom of the funnel. Maybe marketing is doing that more at the top of the funnel, but there's definitely less of a handoff and more of a collaboration and coordination there. And that's kind of the way that I think that it's been changing a lot. Additionally, I would say that because attribution is really, really messy, it's really hard to say marketing drove this number of leads that turned into this many opportunities. How do you extract all the different touch points or be able to say like, well, the SDR or the salesperson might have gotten this person on the phone, but that person had come to the site before and downloaded content and did this and that. And, and trying to piece that apart has been really difficult. And so one of the things I'm seeing a lot of that I'm really happy about is that marketing and sales KPIs are tied together. So it's less about generating leads and less about like a marketing qualified lead, because like a marketing qualified lead is what a marketing says is a qualified lead, but is that really a qualified lead? You'd like to think it is, but that might not always be the case because there's a lot that marketing might not know about that lead that sales would find out on a call. So I don't care as much about just driving leads. I can drive 1 million leads tomorrow. I care more about, does sales find that lead to be really qualified, and is that generating pipeline? So I prefer to look at marketing's responsibility in pipeline generation. And that I think is a stronger metric than saying, how many form fills do we get this month and all of that. And so I think that switch has happened.
So the form fills and the demos that are booked through the website, those are pretty easy to track. Okay. Yeah. But what you're talking about is a bit more nuanced. So maybe you can give some good examples or of KPIs versus less effective KPIs. And then also, building that pipeline in terms of setting meetings. How do you word that so that your both teams are aligned?
Okay. So there's a lot to unpack in that question. So I want to make sure I understand that. Okay. So in terms of, vanity metrics, I think are the metrics that we used to look at. It's kind of like traffic to the site, the number of form fills and things like that. Right. And so the number of, for example, I like to look at the number of meetings, but obviously I only want meetings from a certain TAM, right? Or like certain companies. So typically, we talk a lot about account-based marketing, and that's still kind of a term or whatever. I just call that marketing. You don't know you don't have a specific list of people you're going after, or have like, at least in B2B, like then you're not really very focused. So, you have your list that you're going after, that you're chasing after, marketing and sales together, and partnerships, whatever, like several go-to-market teams these days, right? That all work together. And so you're going after those folks on that list. As you're generating those meetings, you can look at, okay, well, are these on that list, or do these look like the ones on the list? That's great. Like, that's what we're trying to target. That is a good meeting, right? And we know that that's qualified, and that's great. And sales will say that was, a qualified meeting. It might not turn into an opportunity because they don't have budget, or it might not be the right time, or whatever. There might be a number of reasons, right? So those are kind of like examples of things that really matter, is like why the meeting matters. So then it turns into pipeline. That's pretty straightforward, right? Because then at that point, it's, we had a CEO who said this, and a lot of people didn't like this term, but whale hunting. So I guess, everyone's working together to bring in the whale. So, and then at that point, you're all really coordinated and collaborating to bring in that deal and bring it over the line and through the pipe and all that stuff, like accelerating it down the funnel. so to speak. So, I mean, I'm not giving you examples of like specific KPIs. It's just kind of like, this is why it matters, is that it's coordinating the teams as opposed to just marketing saying, I drove some traffic, I drove some inbounds, I drove some of this, and sales saying, yeah, but it's not any good. And then that just goes back and forth and creates a lot of friction. So I keep it very simple in terms of the numbers I like to look at. Yeah.
Okay. No, and basically it's just getting the two teams to agree to what those target metrics are and agree on the definition of what it is. So if it's a meeting, if it's a qualified meeting, if it's an effective meeting, whatever your definition is, you have to get it down and then agree to it. And then both teams can go out. Okay. For that. What else have you seen in terms of getting, marketing to work more effectively with sales in terms of like, hey, do you go out on sales calls? Do you, any other best practices that you've seen?
Oh, that's interesting. Yes. So I mean, nowadays everything's really done on Zoom. so many sales calls. I don't think I've been in a in-person sales call in several years actually. But yes, I love listening to calls, like using, tools like Gong or, even just Zoom recordings, whatever it might be. That is super important to see what's going on there. I've sat in on a lot of calls. Actually, something that I love to do when I'm in-house as a full-time marketer is take the inbound calls. I like being the inbound SDR, and I would actually do that. So if I had a new SDR on my team starting, maybe we'd start them with the inbound leads because they're easier. We know they raise their hand, so they're interested, so they can practice the pitch. But I love doing that so that I could practice the pitch. And then I could also get fancy and try new messaging and new phrasing. So that was a really good way to see, is the pitch actually working? There were also different tactics that I could try out and things like that. So I tend to be very hands-on. So that was something I really liked to do. And I could also feed back to the team. I actually did that a lot when I was at Flow Commerce. So after I left Smartling, I decided to do that a lot at Flow Commerce, and I took most of the inbound calls, and then I would have SDRs join the call with me to hear me give the pitch and get people excited by it, especially because it's low stakes. We know they're interested. They were the ones that reached out. They already kind of know about us. So, it kind of was a really good training. So that was a good way to kind of train sales as well. Yeah. No,
I think that's an excellent best practice. And in some of the most effective organizations that I've worked with, the marketing team, whether it was the head of marketing or the people on that team, would participate more often than not in not just introductory calls, but go out for the those whale visits as well, and just to kind of be a fly on the wall, take notes, find ways to support. Because it's really tough, for you to market, because there's so many different things you can do with marketing. You can do events, you can do online, you can do, content creation, SEO, SEM. So where do you focus? And if you're not interfacing with prospects and customers, you're kind of shooting in the dark, right? You're kind of, right. And oftentimes you're just relying, also, maybe you're relying on what the salespeople say, but maybe the salespeople don't know exactly, they know what they want at the end, but they don't know all the different tools in your arsenal and how you could possibly get there.
It's funny, Mark. One thing I'd love to do, I've brought this up to CEOs and heads of sales before, and they've always said, this is an amazing idea, but no one wants to take me up on it. I would love to get hired in-house somewhere where my first 3 months, I'm a salesperson. As a head of marketing, I come in and I have to do a whole deal beginning to end. I would love to do that. Just have their head of marketing has to come in. They're doing their marketing stuff on the side, but half their week is selling, and they have to close a deal. Like, that is the thing they have to do, an enterprise deal. Wouldn't that be incredible if every single head of marketing arrived somewhere and did that? Like,
it'd be awesome. Yeah, because then you'd really be speaking the same language with the sales team. You'd understand the market. You'd understand the competitive landscape. And then you could pull all these tools out of your arsenal that the salespeople don't have, but the marketing team could put, So that's a great best practice.
That's my one big thing I'd love if I decide to go back in-house somewhere full-time someday. That would be my dream. I want to be somewhere where I can sell the deal and just really know it, and be able to market it from that perspective. So anyway, just an idea for your listeners
listening out there, hey,
make your head of marketing do that. They won't like it except if they're me, but it would totally be worth it.
There's so many different activities related to marketing. I think there's there's 18 basic different things you can do. And, at any given time, let's focus on the B2B space, especially B2B SaaS. What's hot these days and what's not?
Oof. In terms of what exactly? Like the trends, the type of marketing
So I mean, you can look at SEO, SEM, you can look at, LinkedIn, you can look at events, you can look at content marketing, you can look at product-led marketing or product-led growth. So, what do you see is to be less effective and more effective these days?
Ugh. Well, sadly, the sort of typical inbound strategies are obviously a bit more tired at this point, and not as many people are responding to emails. That's
when you say
challenging.
typical inbound strategies. What are those typical inbound strategies?
Well, a lot of the typical nurture where then you do like, come to my site, download a piece of content. Now you get another piece of content, another piece of content, another piece of content. It can't just be like shuffling through blog posts and different white papers and things like that. Like now people are looking for, different types of content, really bingeable content. Like podcasts are really popular now because people can listen to them. I listen to them when I go running later tonight. So,
Awesome.
So those have been really great, and new things like that, but kind of the typical white paper, that kind of thing, less so. I really like stat packs, like really, really short reports that are just all numbers, not just to build those, but to read those. That's all. Like typically I'm looking for just a stat or 3 or 4 stats on certain things that I'm working on. And so that's really, really good content for me. I don't want to read a whole white paper about that. So it's really kind of that smaller short form content is really big. Definitely the video content. Finding ways to do memes and edgy things without being a little too silly. I mean, I think that, there's always that fine line. But a lot of people are testing out with things. It's interesting to see how now you have so many in-house marketers who are like influencers themselves, and I meet so many people who actually, similar to you, I have my business, I do this, but I also have my podcast, or I also have my newsletter and all of this. And so that's been really interesting, is like the rise of the marketing / influencer / head of marketing, CMO, kind of persona has become a really big thing. Also I find I get a lot, I don't know if this is so much for marketing. I haven't been leveraging this as much for marketing, but communities, I definitely need to look more into Reddit. That's definitely an area that I keep thinking, like, there's a lot happening there. And I tend to spend more time on Reddit than I'd care to admit. But it really has an amazing SEO juice, but also for, GPT, like LLMs and everything as well. Like Reddit is just it's a gold mine of
so
just
what you're saying is if your organization is picked up, referenced, reviewed, given good ratings on in a Reddit conversation, that somehow the LLMs will pick that up, and when somebody goes to ChatGPT and says, "Hey, what's this best B2B SaaS for this application?" possibly your platform would be in that list.
So I can't say that it's that kind of, like that there's a recipe for it. It's sort of like, because, you can't go on Reddit and start plugging your product.
Right.
So there's kind of different ways people do it. I've been doing some reading about this, but there are some ways to get people that you sort of get to advocate you and respond like they're not actually working for your company, but they're like on there and they respond, and like crafty ways to do that on Reddit that people do. But in general, that's where people are getting a lot of their information, like Product Hunt as well. You can't go on there and post your product and say like, "Hi, check out my product. It's amazing." But there are ways of going on there and maybe getting feedback or talking to people and seeing what people are interested in, and then having that inform your product, or having that, kind of find a way that your product can come into the conversation. I'm actually not an expert in that area. I'm still doing a lot of reading. And I've read a couple of interesting posts about this recently. But those are areas that are very popular. I mean, it's communities, right? So actually the strongest channel that I'm seeing for all my clients, it kind of brings me to this point, is referrals and partnerships. Mm-hmm. People trust the people they trust. So they want to know, like nowadays the reason why product-led growth has become so popular in many ways. I mean, obviously big enterprise SaaS, it's a little harder than, kind of very like B2C driven SaaS. So with product-led growth being really popular today. It's not too much of a surprise. And in large part, it's product like growth because people are coming in, they're already playing with your product or they already want to see what it is. They want to get in deeper because they're not actually needing so much of the education they used to need. It's more like they already spoke to their friend. They went to their Slack community with all of their buddies. They went on Reddit. They read about something there. They went to Product Hunt, whatever it is. Now they want to get deep into the product. Like they already want to kind of get in there and start the freemium model and that whole thing. So that's why, like, you know, this whole kind of what's the best channel? I get asked that a lot. It's really an area I'm leaning into a lot is how do you really at scale build partnerships and referrals and get more of that.
I want to drill down on the partnerships and referrals in a second. Before that, what about review sites? You know, the G2s, the Capterras, things like that, SourceForges. You know, do you have any experience with them? Just turn it over to you. Yeah,
actually at Smartling, we did a lot with G2 Crowd. I haven't checked to see recently if they're still doing that. They had, you know, both the G2 page as well as the paid, like the ad version and whatnot. And so you can appear on your competitors' pages and stuff. So there were a lot of smart things there. It is great. You do need to get a lot of reviews though. So if you're a smaller company, you don't have a lot of customers, obviously you're at more of a disadvantage. People do read them. I certainly go on them. So they are worth doing and it is worth having a presence there, at least owning your presence. If you're not at least there, in terms of doing the paid version and really investing in that spend, you know, I think that really depends on the size of your business. It depends on the saturation of your space. It depends on the size of your competitors. Are they doing it? Sometimes you do have to do things your competitors are doing. So, but yeah, I mean, I think they are very useful to people. People do rely on user reviews, right?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I was looking at it from the LLM point of view. From where I sit, and this is with my Breeze hat on, you know, the AdWords is not really effective these days. People, instead of just going to Google and typing in a search and then being fed a bunch of ads, they're going to ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or things like that. And so I've been doing a lot of research in terms of how do you get ranked and reviewed in, you know, on those platforms. And one of the things they look at are these review sites. They also look at Reddit. They also look at, you know, if you've been published in a what they would call a more credible publication. You know, for example, I think we had a conversation about the Business Council. So it's just, you know, with review sites, there's that element. But then I look at it and I look at some of the companies and that are in our particular space. And they have literally, you know, 10,000 reviews. And I know that they don't have 10,000 customers. I'd be surprised if they have 1,000 customers, right? So it makes me wonder. And then I go down another rabbit hole. And then there are organizations out there that can help facilitate the review aggregation process. Even the platforms themselves have things where, hey, we will offer gift cards for people who will review your site. And you pay us X, and we'll give a portion of that X to the reviewers. And I'm like, you know, so it's like, at what point do you play the game? And how long will that game, how scalable and, you know, how long will that last?
Right. I mean, I think that's why, you know, with LLMs and constantly learning and everything, and they're seeing everything, like they're seeing all of this, they are seeing, this sounds a little scary, but, you know, they're seeing all of this content being generated across the interweb. So, you know, they can also see if something is, you know, just like how SEO with Google, they could tell, like when you were doing keyword stuffing, remember that 20 years ago and all of that, like, and then it's like, let's like make the algorithm, let's tweak it. And now we've got Panda and now we've got the, you know, Penguin and Hummingbird and all that. You know, it's kind of a similar thing. They'll look at these trends and be able to figure out after a while, like, you know, something's amiss, or does this actually make sense? Do humans behave this way? Right? Like, how did this company get 10,000 reviews overnight? Like,
well, and, that comes back to what your point just prior to this little segue was the importance of referrals and partnerships. Because
Yeah.
referrals, those are legit, right? When somebody says, hey,
Yes.
I've been using this, this is a great tool, you should give it a shot.
Mhm.
So tell me some of what, some of the best practices or structures for referral and partnership programs that you've seen.
So yeah, so that's tricky. There is the traditional ones that you do, the sort of, you refer me, I refer you, and you get 10% of the first year, 5% of second, whatever, like that
Yeah.
usual structure. Definitely the interesting thing is joint go-to-markets. Definitely big win-win there. I think that there has been a lot of leaning into, in past years, the end-to-end platform, the my platform can do it all. And let's get it all in there and everything, and we'll stitch it together. And look, now we're adding a module, we're adding this. And I think that's great. I love modular systems that can give you sort of that flexibility to use this and that. It's really hard to create a system that can effectively do everything. So I think looking in those adjacencies and then bringing that go to market as the way, as sort of the solution to saying we can do it all together is really kind of the most powerful way to do it. And then go to market with prospects, like obviously net new prospects for both of you, but then also shared customers, whatever it might be. So there's a lot there. I don't know that a lot of companies have cracked the nut yet of doing the really effective joint go to market. It's been very opportunistic because I think people are still, they're reacting. They have their sales teams that have to drive leads now, and partnerships has always been a channel, hence why it's called channels. It's like channel and partnerships, right? It's kind of its own thing. That's usually under sales. And I think that, it has to kind of wrap around sales and marketing more, not to be the only way that you generate sales, but as one of the primary leading channels, should be that partnership channel. So I don't have really best practices yet because I don't know who's doing that really well. What I am saying, what I will say is with a lot of customers or clients of mine that I talk to, that I talk a lot about, who can we speak to at this conference, who has a booth or is thinking about getting a booth or attended last year, that we can maybe share a booth and do a whole go-to-market thing together. We're not building our own product, but what if they did take it to the next level and build some sort of go-to-market wrapper around what they're doing together? Like, wouldn't that be really compelling? And it's like, oh, wait, you're one company. No, we're two companies, but we have this combined offering for you that's really strong. And it's not just best of both worlds, but it's like, even more than just, both of us together, so I think that's something I'd be interested to see more of. I've actually been kind of doing that with a couple of clients, from localization and then adjacent to localization, kind of bringing them together. So,
I was going to say with memoQ, some of our more successful partnerships where we're offering supplementary or complementary technologies, and the customer, if you go in individually, they're like, okay, that's great. You guys are awesome at that piece of the puzzle, but we need this other piece as well. And we're like, oh, but we have that. And by the way, introduce partner A, right? So, so
then it's not even so much a referral. It's a slightly different. Then the commercials on this would actually be different, right? Than like your typical referral thing. But I think there's a lot there that can be done. Yeah.
Cool. So you mentioned the Loc space, and I just mentioned memoQ. What it's an incredibly challenging time, especially for service providers. But what are you seeing in terms of ideas or, again, best practices for let's focus on service providers right now, because actually when you were at Smartling was kind of doing both, right?
The tech and the services.
Yes, right?
Yeah, that was really developed while I was there. Was building out the translator network and all of the services and everything. It was mostly the TMS and the GDN, the proxy solution at the time. Yeah.
So, if you're a service provider and right now you have some people saying, hey, translation is free. And others, obviously there's all kinds of views out there. And so what would you do if you were running an LSP right now and you're like, hey, we've got to do something with our marketing. What would you do? What are some things you'd look at?
So in terms of marketing, like what channels or kind of what ideas, like what,
could be branding, could be positioning, could be channels. I mean, what are some things you'd look at? What if I was running LSP? What would be some of the questions you'd ask me?
Well, it would really depend. So, I mean, the reason why is that I stop is that there's, there are many different types of LSPs, and it kind of really depends. Are you trying to do every language? Are you really niche in certain languages or certain dialects, or also the type of content, right? So it's kind of like, are you doing every content? Are you very specific in legal content? I would think that, obviously the larger the LSP, the more diversified they're going to be in doing everything or wanting to do everything, as opposed to smaller ones are going to be a lot more niche focused. So it would depend on, so that would be kind of the first thing, depending on where you were, that then I would say, okay, well, if you're just doing Spanish and just doing Latin American Spanish, and most of your customers are, lawyers and finance and whatnot, then let's like really lean deeply into that. And we're going to align the brand with all that stuff, right? So that's pretty straightforward. With the bigger ones, well, right now, I think a lot of it's around the delivery of content. Like, how is content shuffling around? Because that's always been the hardest part, in my view, of localization. Was like, fine, translation, you find a linguist, you find someone great, they'll translate it, they'll bring it back. But how do you get the content off the site, over there and back? And then now there's all these other tools that have to happen and share that content. The content's being generated by AI. It's being human generated. It's being post-edited. All these different components. There's like this whole orchestration situation that has to happen now across like marketing channels and content types and technologies and everything. So I'm curious to see what the LSPs are doing in that area, because using AI and putting AI to work for you in those areas are really compelling. In that's where I think a lot of the cost savings is going to be. I know this isn't actually answering your question at all. I'm probably just pontificating.
Yeah, it kind of is.
But it's more like, if you're just selling language, you're not going to get very far. So there's a component to the delivery of language that has to really be kind of deeply embedded inside the content creation itself. And how things are kind of connecting and collaborating and moving around. So I don't know what that means necessarily for an LSP, but it's not just about the language anymore and like the translation. It's about much more than that. It's about like the creation, like bringing everything together.
I really like your answers. I mean, and it makes a lot of sense to me. If you're a small LSP, pick a niche. If you haven't already, really, like you said, lean into that. Talk about your expertise in that very specific area and capture all of that. If it's legal English to Spanish translations for Latin America, maybe even narrow it down to a specific country, and then go after that. And that's you can actually compete with the big dogs, because they probably won't have that granular level of expertise. So you're more taking that kind of boutique approach. But for the big dogs, you can do that. But really, your customers, because you're going for the much larger customers anyway, they've got a whole different set of challenges. And it's not just getting these documents translated from one language to another. It's many, many documents, many, many languages, and it has to go from many different departments and platforms and tools. So you need to have somebody that can go in there, a team that can go in there and look at their challenges and where they're operating from. These are our constrictions. We have these legacy systems. We have these internal customers. We have these external customers. Help us. And if you can go in and kind of architect that out and help them with that, then you're bringing value. And nobody's talking about how much per word to translate, this English into Spanish anymore. That's way, way, way down on the hierarchy of needs there. So, no, I like that answer.
Yeah, I think you explained it better than I did. But in terms of I was just riffing off of what you said.
But
that's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, cool. So what about on the technology side though? Because the challenges for the technology side are different from the service provider side. But share some thoughts. What should they be doing? So
in terms of what tech I use, or
no, I'm talking about for the in the local industry tech providers. If you look at the NIMSY list of tech providers, do you know how many there are? There are literally hundreds, right?
There are a lot.
There are. And there are some very niche players there, and then there's some companies that try to do it all, and some right in the middle. So Would it be the same type of recommendation, or do you have anything different for technology providers? And in terms of marketing technologies versus marketing services, any differences, or is it all same?
Well, the funny thing about the tech providers is that, they fall in both camps of being SaaS, and kind of have that product. Yeah, like definitely that product approach, the typical B2B SaaS, kind of like Smartling when I was there. But then we expanded into services. And so then you've got that services component. And I know memoQ and a lot of the other ones don't do that. They have their partners with that. And they only focus on the tech piece. So that's a really interesting, it's a different sale when you're not selling the actual translation. Yeah. Selling the translations where you get into that hole of like, well, why should I have to pay for translation? I could just throw a document into Google Translate and it's good enough is good enough, right? And then, if you're a typical LSP, you have to explain what good enough actually means, right? Because sometimes it is good enough, sometimes it's not. When you're a TMS or your other suite of tech tools, you don't really have to have that conversation. Now you're talking more about workflow and processes and process automation and other pieces like that, which is very much a SaaS conversation. I mean, that's like, pick a SaaS product that deals with workflow automation, what have you. And it's, that's the same conversation you're talking about is the cost savings related to that. Now you don't have to hire, like the cost calculator is very clear. You don't have to hire a person to do this work because that job is being done by our platform. This is going to free up your tech team to do other things because we're doing that tech job for you. So it's more that kind of messaging. So it is different than LSPs. Well,
it's funny, you just mentioned cost calculator, and I don't know if that was a real life example, but I think that's a great example for any kind of technology tool to say, hey, here is a basic thing on our website, and you're going to input some different things like words translated or project managers used. I don't know what the metrics are, but you would insert these different metrics and then and say, well, using our platform or tool, you could achieve this time savings, cost savings, etc. If you'd like to learn more, boom. With the service provider, it's not as easy to do that, right?
Exactly.
You're not selling a tool. So right there is an example, and that's almost
a huge thing. And I built that actually at Smartling. I don't think they have it on their site anymore, but it was exactly what you said. And it was like to the point of like, how many words are you translating or how much content do you have on your site? Like, how much does like a typical project manager cost a year or whatever? Like, it was kind of all these inputs, like 5 or 6 inputs. And then it would say, the amount that you would save based off of that from having to hire or whatever it might be. So,
And I've even seen some, in some industries, like when you talk about product-led marketing, where companies will create a tool like that, put it out onto a separate website, and just make it open to everybody. But then either brand it at the bottom or put a link, or if you'd like to learn more or something like that. So they use it as a marketing tool, but it's also just a tool anybody can use. How important are events in the local industry? Because I gotta be honest with you. I've been to all the majors, and I think that many people in the industry, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but many people in the industry kind of, love-hate relationship with some of the events. It's like we gotta go, we want to go. But how important? And you know what? I think I'm going to change the question, because I think the companies that enjoy the events or get the most out of them are the ones that have an effective strategy for the events. And so it's not really up to the event to deliver. It's up to the participant. So you've been to a bunch of events in this industry.
Yes.
What's an effective event strategy? Okay. You're going to a local industry event. What do you do before, during, and after?
Okay. I'm going to reject the premise of the question a little bit, but hang on. I know I'm always difficult that way.
Just shoot me down.
Just going to reject the premise of that question, answer a different question. No, what I would say is I would look at the bigger strategy of all my events, right? Like just to kind of look at like why, so you're saying like I'm going to a local event. Well, the first question I'll ask is like, well, why am I going to that local event? And there's a few reasons I would be going to a local event. You're right. One is I want to see my friends and see how they're doing and network and all that in the industry. That's important. Or, oh, we have a new product. We want to speak about it and we want to tell that whole story and show the industry first and all that. And that's super fun. Other reasons you go, obviously your prospects are there. I'm not fully convinced that a lot of these local events have as many prospects as they used to, or that they're really prospect driven. I think they're very industry driven. I think that there's a lot of local people there, a lot of like, competitors, if you will, but different LSPs, different tech companies and whatnot. So I think you have to go in with different expectations around what you're going to get out of it in terms of prospects, unless there are still a lot of prospects going to these events. I haven't been to a Loc World in a while. I used to go to them and I loved them and they were great. And we did get prospects at Smartling, but that was a while ago. I will say a few things. If there is anyone you are chasing, assuming you are taking an account-based approach and you know the person, like I know I'm going after Mark Schreiner at BreezeDocs and I'm trying to get him to buy my product. I need to make sure that I am at any event that you go to, that you are speaking at, that you are attending. I have to figure out how I'm going to do that. And I will send a salesperson on my team to fly to that event, even if we're not sponsoring, just to attend to see if they can find you. That I think is one strategy that is something people need to maybe be more aggressive on. Sorry, Mark, if you're going to start getting people stalking you at events now. But I think that's really important. Anyone that you're trying to reach, if you see they're attending an event, you have to be there. You have to try and speak with them. The other one is any customer. If you have a customer attending an event, if they're going to Loc World, if they're not going to Loc World or Gala or anything else, they're going somewhere else, you need to be there. So a big thing is I talk to the sales team and customer success teams I work with and say, I need to know every single event, every single one of your customers or your current prospects are going to. Because if they're going to that event, most likely other people are going to be there as well. So that's kind of what I mean by, I didn't mean to reject the premise of your question, but it's sort of like if there's a Loc event that I wasn't planning on going to before, but then I hear that 3 of our customers are going to be there and a prospect is speaking on stage, we better get a few people on the ground, right? At the very least, if it's too late to, get a booth or something, we have to at least show up with a few folks. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Totally answer my questions, because I was asking about effective, ways to participate in these events, and you just spelled it out. You also brought up a good key point is, that whenever possible, if you can meet your customer face to face, especially at an event, go there and support them, especially if they're speaking, for example.
Yes,
that's hugely important. And earlier you talked about, you say, I can't remember the last time I had a face to face meeting with a customer.
Makes a difference.
There's a huge difference, and I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And if you can get that face to face, and, talk about business, but also maybe grab lunch, coffee or whatever, I think it's really important, because a big part of the buying process, I don't care what you're selling, it comes down to trust. And how can you develop trust, in this remote environment in an accelerated manner? You can do it, but it's challenging and it's much easier, I think, if you meet face to face.
Great.
We're going to wrap this up with a couple questions. For people who want to learn more about basics in marketing and or trends in marketing, where should they go? Do you have like, oh my God, this is the Bible you have to read, or these are the podcasts, or these are the, the people, influencers you need to follow? What's your list?
So I discovered recently this newsletter and website called marketingideas.com. It's very easy to find. I think you pronounced the guy's name Tom Orbach. He is the head of growth at Wiz, which I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's the fastest growing, one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing cybersecurity companies on the planet. Just exploded. And so he is heading up growth there. And so I started reading his blog or his website, and there's a paid version, there's a free version with some tips. Like you get a weekly newsletter with some tips, but then with the paid version, you actually get, his like weekly thoughts and everything. And there's some really good things in there actually that I've been reading up on, which has been great. I also, Neil Patel's website, like he's really big in like SEO mostly. So I like to go there every now and again, because like I think I'm hoping to find more content. I haven't been on there in a little while, to be honest, but I was there the other day reading up on I can't remember what the article was, but I have it bookmarked here because it was really helpful. It was something like, I'm looking into this right now. But I know that he's going to be one of those people that like he knows a lot of what's going on. So that's especially with SEO and LLMs and all of that stuff. So that's a good one. I listen to the podcast. It's the Positioning podcast. I think that's called, like April Dunford, I want to say her name is. Yeah. And so she talks about positioning and she's really smart. That's actually my preferred podcast for when I go running. So I listen to that. It's like maybe a half hour, 20 minutes each pod. Maybe I should say it's longer. So it sounds like I run for longer, but yeah, it's 2 hours.
It's long. A 2-hour podcast. It only gets me through half my run,
Exactly. No, but that was really helpful. I do a lot of work on messaging and positioning right now. And so I started listening so that I could, so I could really kind of start honing that skill more. But yeah, so those are some of the ones. And then there's other things that I check out from time to, like Marketing Brew, but that's kind of like on and off. And I was told to subscribe to, what's it called? Evolving AI Insights. And that's all about kind of AI tools and tech. So that's kind of like where I go to get some of that if I'm not too overwhelmed. So,
and how do you manage your days so that you can spend some time researching and learning versus execuing and taking care of all the other stuff and getting your run in? Do you set
get my run in?
Yeah. Do you? Well, actually, you answered part of that already, where you listen to the podcast while you run. But are you kind of very disciplined about, I need to spend X amount of time every day learning, or is it kind of like I need to on a regular basis? How do you manage that?
So Fridays.
That's
what Fridays are for. I really try and see if I can have my, like with clients and stuff, I have like 4.5 days. I mean, which usually is a lot more than that, of like client work, but to carve out a few hours on Fridays. I actually remember I was at an event. This must have been like 13 years ago, where I heard the then president of Magento say at a conference, like, it's something I do every Friday. And I started doing it. He said, that's when I will take sales calls. I will sign up for, I want to hear about this new tech or this product or whatever, and I will take the calls on Fridays. I always set them up on Fridays, and that's how I learn about new tech in the market. And so I started doing that and taking calls. I don't do that as much now, but I kind of kept that as my Friday thing. You know, the day where I hear about new tech, I read about new tech, I read, marketing newsletters. Yeah. So
and then you can you don't have to actively think about it over the weekend, but it's there. And it's there. And it's something hopefully will percolate up and you'll be like, got something here. Awesome. Yeah. Well, Juliana, you have so much energy, so much knowledge. I really enjoy our conversation every time I talk to you. And this has been great. Thank you so much for being on memoQ Talks. And I can't wait to cross paths in person one day.
Yes, absolutely. I hope so as well. It was great seeing you, Mark. Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thank you for joining memoQ Talks, where we talked with industry leaders about their experiences and lessons learned to gain new insights about what works best across all areas of localization. Join us next time on memoQ Talks.